Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us here today. We have the Executive Director of Bindi Metals, Mr. Henry Renew, here to give us a presentation on the new focus for the company, to discuss the Schryburt acquisition. I'll hand it over to Henry now, and we'll have time for a few questions at the end. Over to you, Henry.
Thanks, Peter. So we want today to give an update on the Schryburt Lake acquisition and specifically focus on why we've decided to diversify into rare earths and the huge potential of this project. So here's the disclaimer. Most of the exploration results refer to an announcement on the 27th of March. So if you want to have a look at those, you can go there. Right, so why rare earths and niobium? Neodymium and praseodymium are critical metals and are specifically very important for permanent magnets. So the demand for these metals is very big at the moment, and it's also used in electric vehicles, turbines, everyday electronics. And so we can see the market growth for the NdPr magnets, as well as other rare earths used in renewable energies, is going to increase 10% year on year up until 2030. So we're very excited about the growth of rare earths and the market, and we think we can offer a project that will meet that demand. So, and it's important to note that the project is also niobium rich, which has potential for next generation lithium-ion batteries, mainly to do with recharging. So Bindi snapshot, here we can see we have 31 million shares on issue. The average price is at 18 cents currently, but it's important to note that we're a relatively new company. We've got a very tight capital structure, and that will, importantly, that will translate into high reward for investors with a exploration success at Schryburt. So the management team includes myself and Leo Horn, and we have a lot of experience operating in North America, in Canada, and especially in rare earths. So we feel as though we've got a good team in place, and we can operate effectively in Ontario. So Schryburt is located, as I said, in Northern Ontario. It's a very sought after tenement package. And we're well positioned within a highly underexplored terrain. So here we can see in this figure that there's a number of really world-class rare earth deposits. The best being NIOBIUM, which is over 1 billion tonnes at 1.7% rare earths, and also has almost 700 million tonnes and 0.4% niobium. And there's also a number of other major resources. The Commerce Resources Ashram deposit, which is 240 million tonnes at 1.9%. And then also Montviel, which is Geomega at 267 million tonnes at 1.5% rare earths and 0.14 niobium. So we can see in the area that it's really a highly prospective belt, has been underexplored and really has gone under the radar for a number of reasons, but it is really one of the best rare earth trains globally. So Schryburt Lake is, as I said, very underexplored. However, it's very comparable to major world-class deposits. And in this particular example, NIOBIUM, which, as I said, was the giant resource at over 1.7 billion tonnes of combined rare earth and niobium. But importantly, these deposits form small intrusions. So the NIOBIUM intrusive body, which is a carbonatite intruding a cyanide, is 4 by 3.8 kilometres. Over Schryburt Lake, which is the same geology, carbonatite in an alkalic intrusive system, is 4 by 3.8 kilometres. So these deposits and the resources that form within these deposits have a very small footprint comparatively, but extend to considerable depths. So to fit a billion-ton resource within that area is quite easy, sorry, and the exploration potential is really massive at Schryburt Lake.
I'll just jump in a question here, Henry, on the last slide. How far is NIOBIUM from Schryburt?
So NIOBIUM is in Quebec, which is the province to the east. So it's, I'd say it's about 500 to 1,000 kilometres away.
But these deposits have a similar look and feel about them. Were they sort of formed around the same time?
Yeah, they're all very similar ages. I think the NIOBIUM one is a bit younger, but the geological setting for these deposits is very similar. So carbonatites, are deep mantle systems, and they form within deep structures that translate through the crust. So the deposit geology of them is very similar. The age doesn't necessarily have to be the same, it's just the formation event has to be similar. And so we can really see very similar geology with Schryburt and NIOBIUM. And at Schryburt, there's good indications of very significant rare earths there, without as much exploration as NIOBIUM. NIOBIUM is a producing mine, so it's a very early stage thing.
And that NIOBIUM operation would give you a fairly good roadmap, and there's a fair bit of knowledge there already and data to draw upon as they went from exploration into development and production, I would assume.
Yes, yeah. So NIOBIUM has been producing since the 1970s, I think, mainly niobium. So there is a big market for niobium as well. It's a well-proven resource. It's been drilled out to over 1,000 meters depth, and it continues at depth. So, and this project was sold for $500 million in 2014 to a company called Margarita PM, and then from Iron Gold, who were producing the niobium. So it's proven geology with proven prospectivity, and these systems can really be quite valuable for shareholders.
Good, thanks, Henry.
So moving on to the previous exploration I was just talking about. So the deposit was explored in the 60s and 70s, mainly for phosphate with some niobium exploration, but really there hasn't been much focus on rare earths. However, there has been high-grade hits within the historical drilling from very few shallow holes, and with a very minimal amount of sampling. So highlights from previous drilling, which drill core was assayed for phosphate with very intermittent samples taken for rare earths. And now these samples were not continuous, they were very selective, and was really just to test to see whether there's rare earths in the system. And so within this sampling, returned very high-grade rare earths. We had 1.5 meters at 5.6%, with also some zircon credits. And then other areas we returned, 1.5 meters over 0.35% rare earths. However, these are all open. So the sampling that has been done was only selectively sampled to test to see whether the mineralogy had rare earths as well as phosphate. And so all these results are open. And the main point is that it indicates that it's a rare earth rich carbonatite that requires really detailed sampling. And within this, there's also been some surface sampling for niobium, which returned 7.6 meters at 0.3% niobium, which is quite rich for these systems, and then up zones, grab sample zones of 1.8% niobium as well. So it's important to note that, as I was talking about the NdPr permanent magnets before in the other slide, that this is really the high value metals within the whole rare earth suite. And a high NdPr ratio equates into a very valuable mineral system. So we can see from the very limited sampling that's been completed so far that rare earth samples within the Schryburt Lake complex have an NdPr ratio up to 34% of the total rare earth oxides, which is very high for these systems, which commonly average around 20%. So albeit the sampling has been very limited, it's a very encouraging result for the project, as well as the high-grade rare earths. So everything points to a very, very prospective system, and think one that we believe will add significant value for shareholders and really have high impact results. Okay, so another important part of these systems is the magnetic response. And here we can see on the right the Mount Weld carbonatite, which is Lynas Rare Earth Corp. And the high grades of these, the high grade deposits of these systems sit within magnetic lows. And so the central lanthanide deposit of Mount Weld, as you can see the resource there, it's almost 10 million tonnes of 10% rare earth, sits specifically in a non-magnetic part of the carbonatite system. So we've used a similar analog at Schryburt Lake to define targets, as we can see on the left side image, and it's really defined two zones of magnetic lows with high-grade rare earths on the outer zones from historical drilling, as well as NIOBIUM as well. So this all points to a significant potential for a rare earth deposit within these magnetic low parts of that carbonatite. And we think these are high priority targets, which will really be a focus for exploration that should start soon. But I should point out from these, from the Schryburt Lake magnetics image, that image is from the 1970s. So the first part that we'll plan to do is to complete a detailed magnetic survey, really have a high resolution imagery to refine drill targets. Okay, so this is the timeline for exploration in Schryburt Lake. So we're about to get underway. We're just finalising an aeromagnetic survey. We're hoping to get that underway soon, and also a hyperspectral survey. And then that will move into reconnaissance mapping, trenching, and further detailed mapping, as well as a surface biogeochem survey followed after that. And then hopefully once we have all this data, we'll move into a winter drill program. But the important point is we'll be very aggressively exploring the project. We should have a good pipeline of news flow, and really want to have high impact exploration underway to create value for the shareholders.
Henry, it looks like you're getting stuck into it straight away, and it'd be great to see the magnetic surveys, the results from that. The region, you said you're going to do some drilling in winter. What's it like in winter and as compared to summer over there, and access?
So access is pretty good. It's close to a major highway and also close to the Musselwhite gold mine, which is a Newmont operation. Winter drilling is very common. It's all helicopter supported, so and it's very a lot of companies in Canada drill in winter for a few reasons. The lakes freeze over, so access is very good. You can get access on winter roads. There is a winter road which bisects the project within 5 kilometres or something, so that'll be utilised to support drilling operations. But we really think with the summer program and gaining all the data and refining our drill targets, we'll move into a high impact drill program in the winter time.
And Henry, it's a busy region up there. There's a lot of activities. It's a real mining supported area of the world there in North America. What's access to skill sets, staffing, contractors, that sort of thing?
Access is great. Obviously, Canada is it's very highly skilled mining country, and we have a number of contractors that we'll use to help with field services, as well as having our own geologists based in Canada as well. So, and then we have a number of contracting companies for drilling, geochemical surveying, everything. So the access to skilled work is very good, and particularly in Ontario, it's one of the best mining jurisdictions in the world. So, and there's also a number of government programs to help junior explorers like ourselves. There's a program from the Ontario government for critical minerals and rare earths specifically. And so we hope to put an application in for that exploration initiative funding later in the year. And that can pay up to, a few $100,000 worth of your exploration expenses. So it's a great place to work. It's very easy to work, and it's a well-tested jurisdiction. Excellent. Good stuff. Thanks, Henry. No worries. And that's it. So we encourage people to look at our announcements, follow us on LinkedIn, and we should have some more updates soon. Thanks, Henry. I'm just going to follow up a little bit on the niobium. Yep. We've heard a lot about the rare earths and neodymium, praseodymium, and the importance of those in the complex for magnets and the EV vehicle transition. Where does niobium fit in the world of special metals? So niobium is a critical metal. It's been used for aerospace. It's used as an alloy to strengthen metals. It's very lightweight, so you can use it in cars. But it's also has next generation lithium-ion battery potential as it helps recharge batteries a lot faster. So the market demand for it is increasing, and there are producing mines around the world which at high margin, like the NIOBIUM mine, which has been producing niobium since the 1970s. I mean, they really have, 10%, almost 10% of the market for the niobium trade worldwide. So while it's mainly a rare earth project with niobium credits, we think both metals will really add a lot of value to the project. And is niobium a metal that has that the Chinese industry has a strategic foothold, or is it more common globally? Most of the niobium is produced out of Brazil, actually. The vast amounts of it comes out of Brazil. So China is an important supplier, but there's very few mines that are really producing at the same scale as Brazilian operations and the NIOBIUM operations. They really control most of the market. So if we come across some very interesting and big intersections in niobium, it will really be very well received in the North American space, and there's also a great market for it. The historical hits on the total rare earths under Schryburt from the 70s are pretty outstanding when you compare to some of the West Australian and other rare earths projects around the world. If you can replicate those sort of results, you'd have to see some pretty positive response to the share price if we can get that sort of percentages as well. Is that the sort of common percentage rare earths in the carbonatites that you're looking for? Yes, well, it's a good point to make, Peter, that when you're comparing carbonatite-hosted deposits versus clay-hosted, clay-hosted are very low grade and metallurgically very difficult to produce, whereas carbonatite-hosted are big, high-grade deposits. So what we've seen in the historical drilling so far, with the intermittent sampling, we're getting 40 or 50 metre wide zones to the end of hole, with essentially plus 0.3% rare earths in some zones. Then you're getting higher grade zones of over 5%. But the important thing is in all the holes, we're seeing above all grade rare earth assays. So, and there's only been 6 drill holes in a a 4x4 kilometre carbonatite pipe. So if we're comparing NIOBIUM and Schryburt Lake, Schryburt Lake has proven resources. So and that deposit fits within a small portion of the whole carbonatite. So it would be easily missed in previous exploration for a major resource to be there. And from the drilling results so far, we're seeing rare earth mineralization over a wide area. So it's just about targeting it in more and honing in on where the deposit could be.
Henry, sounds pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to the results that come through and the initial mag surveys you'll be doing as well. And we look forward to seeing the news come through from Bindi Metals. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks for your time, Peter. Appreciate it.